Hi, welcome back. Today I want to discuss my experience with two books by Selma Lagerlof of Sweden. I technically read the entirety of the Saga of Gosta Berling, but there were definitely parts that I didn't fully comprehend and, read pretty quickly, almost to the point of skimming. So I don't feel good really saying that I completed it or thoroughly understood it, but I will talk more about that. And then I read about half of The Wonderful Adventure of Niels Holgersen. So I am definitely not the expert or the one to be watching if you are looking for a more in-depth analysis of either of these books or Selma Lagerlof's work as a whole. Instead, I will defer you, if you're looking for something like that, to Jorge's Corner, where Jorge gives a wonderful video analysis of the Saga of Gosta Berling. When I saw that video, I said, there's no way I can do better than this at analyzing this book, and so I picked up The Wonderful Adventure of Niels Holgersen, which I thought maybe I would be able to do a better job with that one. But regardless, if you're looking for an analysis of Saga of Gosta Berling, check out Jorge. I'll link that in the description. And if you're looking for more of an overview of Selma Lagerlof's works, I'll defer you to Jerry at The Old Man in the Reed, who has a great video covering a pretty good part of her bibliography, and just a brief overview of it. So check those out. And if you want just my opinion and experience and what I learned from kind of not being able to completely get into these books, you can continue watching or not. This is more of a video diary for myself, I suppose, just to chronicle this Reading the World project, and giving my honest opinions as a, casual reader that reads a lot of books. So with that, I will start. The Saga of Gosta Berling, as I said, is the one that I thought was going to be I thought this was going to be the one that I covered, but again, I just felt like I wanted to try something maybe a little bit shorter or a little bit more of a fable type of kids book. The Wonderful Adventure of Niels Holgersen seemed to fit that bill, but I actually found it to be quite advanced and a little bit even darker than I expected, at least the first half of it that I read. It has kind of a whimsical opening, like a boy meets a gnome. It's a gnome in one translation I saw, and an elf in another translation I saw. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious what the actual word is there. But this gnome or elf transforms the boy into a gnome or elf as well. And then this boy basically climbs on the back of a goose, and the goose starts taking him around the countryside of Sweden. And as Jerry at The Old Man in the Reed says, it's basically a geography lesson. I got about halfway through, and the stories just really weren't interesting me, kind of a lot of fables about animals sort of thing. And I really just had a hard time finding any coherence in the story. And I had the very same difficulty with the Saga of Gosta Berling. And that was when I had started the Saga of Gosta Berling. I felt the same thing, where I was really interested in kind of the opening. I thought it was a great opening, just like The Wonderful Adventure of Niels Holgersen, but it kind of breaks away from this opening of a pastor who gets removed from his position because he drinks too much, and is very depressed. And then he meets this really colorful cast of characters at a place called the Ironworks, and then Satan shows up, and I'm really getting into this. This is really interesting. But then the story kind of went in a direction that I was really not expecting, and it became more about Gosta Berling's romances with other various women, and some other characters that didn't seem related to what was going on at all. So this is just a sort of thing that I guess it's teaching me about myself as a reader, and I guess if I were to write something, how I would approach writing, and just, you know, being a reader and how you want to write is it kind of all goes together. And that's not to say that I don't value these. I do value Selma Lagerlof as an author. I mean, it's clear from her works here that she really can write well, has an amazing vocabulary. Just like, you know, you can admire the technicality of jazz or metal musicians without necessarily that being your favorite kind of music. You can still admire the craft and the technicality that they bring to the work. And Selma Lagerlof has been, I guess, described as poetic, but it also strikes me too as what to some people is poetic is not to others. I actually tend to find very simple and straightforward language to be more effective at delivering poetry than necessarily really ornate language. And you know, what is musical and what is poetic in language is quite subjective, just as it is in actual music. So I think it's something to keep in mind. Sometimes I feel like there's a certain idea of poetry that there's a certain definition of what makes it good, but I think that's arbitrary. But you could say the same for music, I guess, too. Anyway, yeah, so I didn't quite get completely into her, even though I appreciate what she's doing. And there were some really interesting parts when I got to the end of Saga of Gosta Berling. Like I said, there were many parts in the middle that I was reading very quickly. But it's funny that even reading this book very quickly, I was able to kind of pick up on what was happening, but it isn't told in a very straightforward way at all. There's some one part that stands out to me is when Gosta Berling hunts a bear, shoots a bear that's notorious in the area, or you know, that part, if you were to take it out of context and just make that a short story or a poem, I could say, wow, I could really appreciate that part of the book. So I think there are things in here that make me think maybe I want to come back to Saga of Gosta Berling and reread it someday. It might be one of those books that you really have to reread to fully appreciate it. And I'm not ruling it out. This is not one that I'm going to, you know, sell or whatever, or give away. It's one that's going to hang around, and one day I may be compelled to go back to it, because there certainly were enough interesting things in there, but I'm not quite sure yet if it's enough for me to absolutely recommend it or absolutely say I would go back to it. But yeah, again, what about literature, reading and writing appeals to me? I do like a specific structure. I pay a lot of attention to overall structure of works, and when I run into a book that has sort of a very confusing structure, or a structure that I can't quite grasp, like how the pieces are all fitting together, or I'm not convinced that the pieces do all necessarily fit together, it kind of starts to bother me. I like when authors stay really close to a particular theme and maybe use sort of one theme or one idea to explore a lot of ideas through that filter. I really like that approach to novellas and to novels. And of course, lately I'm also very partial to works that are shorter but very dense in meaning and ideas, or at the very least, you know, just dense in meaning and ideas. They can be longer, but I'm never wondering, like, is this going to connect to something else? Or, you know, they stay tight and they stay close to some kind of central theme or place or character. It's Gosta Berling and Niels Holgersen. These two books both left me feeling like wondering if there was actually any ground to this. I was feeling in much of the books like there was no grounding for me to enter the world and to believe that this is sort of a real place that I can become immersed in. So anyway, this is all very subjective, I know, but I'm just trying to describe my experience of reading it. And finally, I would say, again, like if it's an author that interests you, there's definitely value here. There are definitely people that value Selma Lagerlof as an author immensely, and it just might not have been the right time for me. And I also haven't been feeling too well the past couple days. I don't know if you can hear in my voice, just a cold or something. But that sometimes, you know, that can affect your perception of what you're reading as well. And but you know, if I waited to be in the right mood or the right time and place to read all of these books, I would never get through this project. And in fact, I would miss out on reading a lot of things that really surprised me if I only waited for the right time and place. So it just kind of is what it is. I'm giving my thoughts. I may come back to it. Hopefully you check out those videos by the other creators I mentioned, as I think they are a better guide to Selma Lagerlof. So next up, as I've hit the 1,000 subscriber mark, I plan to do a fun little video for that. It's not going to be anything like, you know, my musings about the project or anything. I kind of did that a couple videos ago, but this will be something more fun and related to world literature. So with that, take care, and we'll see you next time.